Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I am delighted to be joined this evening by Kevin McCluskey. You are dialing in from Budapest. We're not in the same room, Kevin. We're not like the couples on Facebook who are having conversations with each other on the social media whilst sitting on the same couch. Yes, the
At least
teams are
that's
out.
the pretense we're going to keep up for the next half an hour anyway.
We've got to now that has been said. The teams are out. Celtic versus Hibernian. We've all had a say about this. Kevin, after the game at the weekend, you and I cover the vast majority of Celtic games domestically and in Europe. And obviously, it was the famous old Jimmy Greaves game of two halves at the weekend, wasn't it?
It was, from what I've seen anyway, as you know, I was away over the weekend, so I missed the game live, but I've seen enough of the highlights and I've seen enough comments and WhatsApp groups and match reports to get a decent feel of what happened. It feels like it's a game I did watch though, because I think I've seen it before earlier on this season. Just a game where it's certainly going judging by the highlights of the first half, maybe quite a lot of possession, but creating very little and not looking like we were going to. Um, you lose a really soft goal from a set play, not defending another cross ball that's come in. It's been our weakness. Been our weakness for a good few seasons, and we seem to be getting over it under Ange, and now it's crept back in again in the last few weeks. I don't know if we blame Joe Hart so much for that one, but someone needs to start commanding the 6 yard box when a cross ball comes in.
Absolutely.
So it's something that needs to get looked at. And then, but yeah, after that, second half, again, lots of possession, and we get the 3 goals. I'm still going to have concerns over chance creation. I don't think we created many clear cut chances from what I saw, but I can't complain at 3 goals. And really, the first two, especially O'Reilly's goal, was top drawer, just to lash that one in from outside the box in the top corner. But we can't keep on going on relying on wee moments like that to get us over the line in games. We need a big performance tonight. We need a 90-minute performance tonight where we go and put Hibs to the sword, as difficult as that might be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when you look at the halftime analysis that James and I did against St Johnstone at the weekend, James suggested, and there was the gasp from the comment section, that perhaps Jamesy Forrest and Mikey Johnson would be the two guys to come on and make an impression. I think that the big thing for me watching the game at the weekend was the fact that all 4 substitutes made an impression. They all contributed positively, Kevin. And it was Jamesy Forrest, Mikey Johnson, Tomoki Awata, and of course O. And what's happened tonight is that Brendan has rewarded 3 of those guys with a start tonight, and Yang has dropped not just to the bench but completely out of the squad. Let's run through both starting 11s. First of all, obviously, we will have a look at the Celtic side, and some might be surprised. I'm not really, because as Jungle Lion was saying here earlier on, if obviously if you're going to be angry and you're going to get into a bit of a rant, then you're going to have to follow it up. So Jungle Lion was saying had to make changes after that rant on Sunday. Absolutely. You can't go on about lack of application, being too comfortable, making the changes, one of which was made at half time. That's a proper hooking, not quite getting taken off after 35 or 25 minutes, but it's a proper hooking at half time. And I think the message is clear. There were some players on that park who were too comfortable, Kevin, and they've been punished by losing their jersey. Tonight, there's probably 1 or 2 who have slipped through the net due to the fact that we don't have sufficient backup for them. So the starting 11 for Celtic, Joe Hart in goals. I absolutely agree that he's got to command his penalty area better, Kev. But what he did do in the into injury time, he made a save that, is it a world-class save? I don't know why you can't make a world-class save at McDermott Park in Perth. Starts the move, we score the 3rd goal, we win the game. Alistair Johnston at right back with Greg Taylor at left back. The 2 central defenders are Carter Vickers and Scales. We'll come back to that scenario at the moment. I don't think there's any doubt that they are the 2 first picks, but it's still interesting that there's no Gustav Lagerbielke or Mike Nawrocki on the bench. Nat Phillips, who might actually be going home in 3 weeks' time, back down to Liverpool. He's on the bench. In the midfield, Awata finally gets that start, Kev, and he's alongside captain Callum McGregor and Matt O'Reilly. Both of those 2 midfield players were goal scorers at the weekend. Mickey Johnston gets his first start, and I asked the question, on the bulletin at 12:30 this afternoon. When was the last time Mikey Johnson started a game for Celtic? You've got Louis Palmer on the left. There was a wee scare when he went down, but it turned out to be cramp rather than a muscle strain. And the big man, Big O, starts up top on the bench. We've got Scott Bain, Nat Phillips, Kyogo drops to the bench. This is ruthless. I like the ruthless streak that Brendan has shown here. David Turnbull, was he one of the guys who was passive? Potentially. Odin Thiago home. You've got Marco Tilio, who has replaced Yang in the squad, and he gets the seat on the bench. Paulo Bernardo, James A. Forrest, and Tony Ralston making up the subs. And for Hibs, you have Marshall, former Celtic player, of course, Miller, Fish, Levitt, Yuan, Boyle, Newell. Quite like Newell. I think he's a good player. He's captain in the side tonight. Stevenson, Jair, Campbell, and Rocky. Not Rocky, just Rocky. So what do you make of the starting 11? And do you agree with Jungle Lion? If you're going to come out swinging, as Brendan did, you've got to back it up. You've got to back your words up, and he's done that.
Yeah, he certainly has. I think like most folks, when I've seen that starting 11 for tonight, there's a wee taken aback a little bit. There's a few surprises in there, but I'm only surprised because I didn't think he would actually make the changes. But I mean, you're spot on. If you come out and talk the talk as Rodgers did after that game at the weekend and showed just how unhappy he was, you can't go and pick the same 11 for the next game then. So he's he's talked the talk. He's living up to his words there. I'm pretty happy actually with the changes that he's made, and I include taking Kyogo out for this game. And it's not a slight on him, but we've all seen over the last month and a half, maybe even longer, maybe even all season, that he hasn't been utilised correctly under Rodgers. He doesn't seem to fit or like the style of play, the system that we've got at the moment. It doesn't suit him. It's not to say that he's become a bad player overnight. It's just not working for him at the moment. And every time when O's come on over the last wee while, he has impressed. He's made a difference. I've liked the fact that he's usually been up top with Kyogo behind him. I think that's helped him. But it's a big night for him because, I mean, you asked the question, when was the last time Mikey Johnson started a game? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm going to go back to maybe over a year ago. Longer than that, because he was away all last season, wasn't he?
So probably you're going 18 months. I mean, there was a shout today from Patrick McGilp. He reckons it was 2 years ago. I'm going to look at that just while you're talking. I'm going to figure out. Yep.
So it must be that length of time. And I know O started games, obviously, more recent than that. But when was the last time he actually got a run in the team? So this is a massive game for him. If he can come in and put in even a half-decent shift, it maybe gets him the jersey for the next couple of games. And I mean, there's a big one coming up at the end of the month. I mean, what an ideal opportunity for him to stake his claim for that game. But yeah, looking through that team, I'm quite happy with the changes, especially actually the one I haven't spoken about yet in this little ramble, Iwata. So chuffed to see him get in there because he's been the one centre midfielder that hasn't been given a shot at it. You know, Turnbull's had his games, Bernardo's had his games, Holmes been in there. And every time Iwata's come on, he's just looked assured. He's never put a foot wrong. But for some reason, and we'd had the worry that maybe Rodgers just didn't fancy him. But every time he's come on, he's applied himself really well. And again, if Rodgers is true to his word and what he's looking at is how players perform in training, and then if they can transfer that onto the pitch, then Iwata's demeanour, his mindset, everything has been perfect. And he deserves that chance. So I'm really, chuffed for him. And another one, if he can put a decent performance like we know he can, then maybe he nails down that position while Rio's still recovering from his injury, and we can finally get a settled midfield trio for the remainder of this year.
Yeah, the thing with Iwata, and I think this builds up proper brownie points with Brendan Rodgers, is he strikes me as being very low maintenance as a player, Kevin. You know, he's a player who's come in as the MVP in Japanese football. James is always quick to point out that none of the other Japanese players that we have had, regardless of the talents of Hatate and Kyogo and Maeda, not one of them has won that accolade whilst playing in Japan. He comes in with that kind of kudos, yet, he'll play wherever he's played. I think he's played games at centre-half, even though I don't think he's as effective there. He's played games at right back for Brendan Rodgers. But I think time and time again, every time I've seen him in the midfield, like you were suggesting there, he looks more comfortable playing in that defensive midfield position. Not just that, though, when he goes forward, as he obviously did at the weekend, we've seen him scoring that excellent goal against Hearts. We've seen him getting the assist against St Johnstone. I think he's one of the players that is very understated, and I don't think he'd have been, rattling on the gaffer's door demanding game time. He's bided his time. Every single appearance he's made, I think he's made a positive contribution, and he's been rewarded this evening with a start. We were talking earlier about Mikey Johnson. If we're talking about starts, off the top of my head, I think the last time Awata had a start would have been the Scottish Cup final against Inverness. At the end of last season, he played centre half. Mikey Johnson, however, the last time, I think, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, was the 22nd of December 2021. And it was a nothing each draw against St Mirren, where he played the full 90 minutes at left wing. So I think I remember that game, actually. Was that not the game where Owen Muffet was playing on the other wing? I'm sure it was. Away from home. We couldn't break them down. Leela Bada was playing through the middle. He was playing centre forward, remember? So he's starting his first game tonight, Kev, in 2 years in a Celtic jersey. Let's not forget what it actually takes for any professional to remain in the correct state of mind that, you're being put out on loan. Now, often the loan deals can result in you basically running down your contract and then you never kick another football for Celtic. More often than not. I mean, there's been a few successes, but they're few and far between, Kev. And I think that when he went out on loan over in Portugal, none of us were expecting him back. None of us. But because of the way he's applied himself over there, he's broken into Stephen Kenny's international team. And it's been probably the international performances that's kept reminding us, hiya, I'm still here. And then, of course, he gets thrown in against tonight's opponent. So at Easter Road, I thought he was poor. And then he drops right out the squad after that. So it's constantly getting that knock that, he's a human being. He can take a knock to his confidence. But he kept getting back up and fighting back. And I think what you've got there is 3 games: Motherwell, Lazio, St Johnstone. He's come on. He's had purpose. He's had an intent. He's made things happen. He wins a penalty against Motherwell. He looked bright against Lazio when we really didn't have much to write home about. And then at the weekend, he made a huge difference. There was an energy to his play, a tempo. He looked as though he was trying to create, Kev. And I'll tell you something, right? At the beginning of this season, if somebody told me that by December we would be playing Liam Scales and Mikey Johnson, I wouldn't have believed you. But under the circumstances, I wouldn't have it any other way tonight.
No, I was thinking about this earlier on because I had a sneaking suspicion that Mikey Johnson would end up starting today, because over those last 3 games that you've mentioned, he's come on and he has been a difference maker in one way or another. So even if you look at Lazio, he didn't do much after the first 10 minutes that he came on, but in those first 10 minutes, he'd done more than, I think it was Palma that he replaced. No, it wasn't Palma because he wasn't playing. Was it James Forrest, sorry, that he replaced in that game?
Yes.
He definitely did more than Yang did in the 70, 80 minutes that he got, and he was only in the park for a short space of time. He looked dangerous there. Against St Mirren, he wins the penalty. That gives us the lead in a game that we should have won. He's got an assist, or he's a secondary assist, certainly a part of the build-up anyway for O'Reilly's goal, I think, at the weekend there. He's, every game he's played recently, probably since Hibernian, he has impacted it somehow. And he's done more in cameo appearances than others have in 60, 70 minutes from the start. So it's a crazy thought to think of Scales and Mikey Johnson being in the team just now. 2 players I would not have lost any sleep over if they'd left us in the summer. To be fair, I'm not going to cry many tears if Mikey Johnson leaves in January, but right now he deserves to be in the team because he is making an impact when he comes on. And as you talk about, that trajectory of going out on loan, probably to win a contract somewhere else, to then come back and stick at it. The one thing, I've been a bit of a detractor of Mikey Johnson recently, and not sure that he's got the class for us. One thing you can't take away from him is that state of mind that you mentioned, and it's a bit of a throwaway because we are the Celtic state of mind. But he has got a positive state of mind about him. He's never let it get him down. And when he's come on recently, to go back to that one, he's come on as a guy that's been trusted to try and bring us back into games. And he's playing like a guy that wants to bring us back into games. You can tell it actually means something to him. So while he might not always have the end product, there's always effort. And sometimes that's enough to get you over the line. Sometimes it's enough to get you a starting jersey and maybe revitalise a career. As outrageous I thought as that might have sounded about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I wrote a list of 10 players that I felt could leave Celtic. He was on it, so was Liam Scales, so was David Turnbull. Now, I'm not saying that Mikey Johnston's off that list yet, because as you say, you never know what's going to happen in January. But what I would say is that he has shown it from the bench. And tonight, he needs to prove, Kev, he's not an impact player. He's a guy that you can start, you can rely on to play part of a game plan, starts the game, plays the 90, wins your game that way. He needs to prove that tonight because, as I say, this is his first start in a Celtic jersey in 2 years. Incredible to think that. Daniel Hamilton.
Yeah, it's massive for him. So it's massive for him to do that. When you look back to last season and the likes of Haksabanovic, who we were raving about as being the impact player, would come off the bench, start him in a game, and he was lost. And that's why he's not here any longer. So Mikey Johnston's shown us he can do it a wee bit off the bench. It's a massive game. If he can prove he can do it from the start, he only needs to look behind him at Liam Scales as that example of what can happen.
You know, I look at players like him, Stephen Welsh, once he comes back to full fitness, Tony Ralston at right back. And I think that, you know, these guys, if you build a side where they become your second call, your second choice, if you like, then you're building a framework which includes a bit of experience, the homegrown talent, and with that comes the understanding of Celtic, what the standards are at the club, what the expectations are of the fan base, because obviously you've been born into it in terms of you know, a lot of these guys, Stephen Welsh, McGregor, etc., they've been at the club since they were, you know, pre-teen, some of them, which is incredible. And I think that's important to have a core group of players like that, even if they're not your first picks. I mean, Tony Ralston, right? He must be a manager's dream. You know what I mean? He comes in, Kev, when he's required, and he always applies himself. And now he's no longer this joke figure that you had been for probably 18 months to 2 years prior to Ange Postecoglou coming to the club. He's now an asset. He's an asset in the side. And, you know, you think to yourself, you might not be the player that's going to get us to that next level, but you're a great squad player. Brilliant for a second pick. And whenever Johnston, Alistair I'm talking about this time, needs a rest, you bring in Tony Ralston. You know he can just, you know, click into place there, Kev, and you can trust him. And I think that it's important to have a group of players like that at the football club. Mikey Johnston, as I say, I thought he was away in the summer. He might still be away in January. You never know. However, he's definitely someone who we're discussing positively rather than just leave the building and don't let the door hit your backside. And there's a few, maybe Haksabanovic is now in that category. Daniel Hamilton comes in to say, let's hope we can play with more tempo than as of late, get off to a quick start. I think it's important because in the past, Kev, we've been in a situation where it was high tempo from the off, and it was high tempo for 90, 95, 100 minutes, however long the game lasted. And last season, there was a feature of many of the games whereby 60, 65 minutes, you've got tired legs there because they've been on at it for the entirety of the game. And then Ange Postecoglou would make his 5 substitutions, make his changes, and would go at it for another half hour and just absolutely bombard the opposition that way. This season's been a bit different in that if we don't get into that groove, we got into it against Aberdeen, there's been occasions this season where we find it difficult to step the tempo up. And I think one of the issues has been a lack of quality on the bench, that you can make that change 60, 65 minutes in. But of course, the opposite of that happened at the weekend where we were so one-paced. We needed a bit of life about us, and the substitutes gave us it. So tonight, it really is important, as Daniel was saying there, we need to hit the ground from minute one and really go at it, because we can't have another situation tonight where you and I are sitting at half-time saying, oh, here we go again. You know, what changes are we going to make? Is it Johnston for Tilio at halftime? Johnson for Forest at half-time. So I think it's an important point. We need to really go high tempo from the first whistle this evening.
Yeah, it's the thing that's been missing from us for the last wee while, is that, you say, intensity from the word go. Watching us at times when we kind of settle ourselves into that rhythm, the slower pace, it's a dream for the opposition at times, because they just sit back and pack the box. And we've struggled to break teams down this season. We've struggled to get past the low blocks. We're not hitting the byline like we did under Ange and attacking the near post. We're maybe putting the cross ball in earlier, but we don't have the focal point in there, which is why I think might actually be a good option up front, because he's a wee bit taller, he's a bit more physical. If we are chucking the ball in a wee bit earlier, I think he can cause a few more problems. But after the run of form that we've been on, coming off the back of that Aberdeen game, we need a response. And maybe what happened at the weekend was absolutely ideal, and it's everything that we've needed. We've had a really poor first half. We've come out, had an absolute bollocking of the manager at half time, put in a decent performance in the second half. Maybe some of the players have thought, I'll be fine for the weekend, or for the midweek game. And Rodgers has said, nah, you're out. I'm making my changes. I'm sticking to my guns on this one as well. And that's the rocket that they might need. And they need to start like that. Every jersey is now under threat. So yeah, if we can come out, and we know that if we can come out with a high tempo attack with intent and with purpose, we've got players that can hurt that opposition. You've got Mikey Johnson there, who's desperate to save a Celtic career. You've got Palmer, who I think looks like he can do something dangerous every time he gets the ball. O's, again, looking to cement a place in the team from the start for the first time. There's goals in midfield. There's plenty of reasons to be optimistic, but we've got to start with the intensity that says we're here to win this game, and if possible, we're going to do some damage to Hibs. As difficult as that might be, but let me see something here. My interesting stat for you is that although Hibs have only lost one of their last 12 games, they've outscored their opposition twice in terms of XG in that time. So they don't create very many chances, and they give up more than they create. The danger is going forward. They're a bit ruthless, but we have the ability to create chances in this game, or to get chances. And if we can take one early, it's that old one. If we can take one early, you could see us going on and really dominating the game.
Well, that's what we're hoping for, because there has been some concerns around our lack of intensity and the fact that we've been playing at a snail's pace. It's been going from side to side, old horseshoe, left to right, and we've seen a lot of the kind of sideways passing. I think a big part of that is when you lose a player like Rio Atati, Kev, the guy that he can craft open a chance out of nothing. He's able to play that ball through the eye of a needle, right in behind the defence. And let's be honest, most teams domestically that come to Celtic Park are going to be playing ultra-defensive football, anti-football, and that's fine, because we need to find a way. But no, I think you're turning into a bit of a stato yourself, Kev, so I'm loving that data analysis.
I like John Brown, stat every now and again,
Yeah, absolutely. I like making them up. John Brown, with this lineup, it's going to be an interesting game. I think it will be interesting, because you're looking at, as we say, Mikey Johnson. Okay, he's made an impact from the bench. Can he do it from the start? Completely different scenario. We've also got Being the Bastard. A swift start tonight, please, from the boys. I mean, Acsom can be slow to start if they so feel. Well, actually, when we were coming on, Kevin said you better go live because we'll get a row otherwise. I know that everybody's always checking their timekeeping. But it definitely was 1915 when we went live. Sean the Mac, delighted to see Awata. I think he really deserves it. Awata, for me, the big discussion we've had this week, going back to data analysis, Kev, is that we're led to believe that Awata coming in and playing a defensive midfield role is an issue because Callum McGregor no longer has the legs in his advancing years. I wish I was advanced as him in his advancing years to be playing an offensive role. And we questioned it today because, I mean, let's be honest, right? If it was all down to data, we wouldn't bother playing. Data would give you the answer to everything. It would pick your team for you. It would tell you the score. It doesn't always work that way. Obviously, you need to utilise the data and you need to use that as a tool, I think. And when you're looking at Callum McGregor, people have been using some of his Scotland performances as a benchmark and as an example. Do you believe that he is at a stage where he can't be playing this offensive midfield role that, he's probably going to be playing it tonight because Iwata's going to be playing defensively?
Aye, well, first of all, I think if my decline in my legs took me to Callum McGregor's level, I would be pretty happy. He's, I think for me, he's head and shoulders above any other midfielder in the country. General terms, when he's on his game, there's no one can really touch him, not even Matt O'Reilly, who we love so much. I think McGregor's just different class. I subscribe a little bit to when you get older, your legs go from you a wee bit. You're maybe not as quick to cover the ground. Maybe you don't have the speed of pass or the thought of pass. But, and this isn't meant to sound derogatory in any way, at this level in Scotland, I think McGregor can still play up one a little bit and have a big impact in the game. And I think having somebody alongside him like Iwata helps him massively because, I mean, Iwata's a 6, but Iwata can play the number 8 role as well. So he can do the dual, and so can McGregor. So you don't need to have one being a solid 6 all the time and sitting in the defensive role. Those two can interchange and swap around, and one can sit and one can attack, and then they switch it around. I don't think it has to be as cut and dry as Iwata's your 6, so he sits deep on McGregor, then doesn't have the legs to last the full 90 in the advanced role. They can switch around, and I think that'll get the most out of him. I mean, you see his passing. I mean, the way that he controls a game from deeper, he can step up and do that. And he does, as much as I've said, as he got older, maybe the speed of thought goes for playing those passes. He's still got it. He can still play the passes. He can still drive forward and get the goals like he did at the weekend. So he might not be as effective as he was when he was a 23-year-old in that attacking midfield role, but he's still definitely got a lot that he can offer us, especially in Scotland, in the domestic game, in that wee bit more advanced position. And having somebody like Iwata, who's another all-rounder next to him, can only help him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Iwata for me, he gives you the defensive protection of your two centre halves. He can drop back into there if you're attacking. In possession offensively, you can go to a back three because you've got Iwata who can drop back a wee bit, and your fullbacks can bomb on. So I think he allows you to open it up a bit. And of course, I've watched Matt O'Reilly this season. When he's playing and Yang is to his right, you notice a lot of the time Matt O'Reilly is doing the work of two guys there. And it must be difficult because he's trying to be the creative force himself, and he's basically doing all the defensive work for Yang. And by the way, I was giving him a bit of praise for his defensive qualities, Yang, but he was obviously one of the guys that was feeling a bit comfortable, and now he's so comfortable he's probably sitting on the team coach at the moment because he's not even on the bench. Gregor McEwen, anyone know if you can watch the PPV on an actual telly? Well, as long as you've got one of the newfangled smart TVs, I'm pretty sure you can. Just log into your Celtic TV. What's it, $12.99 tonight for a PPV if you want to watch it in the UK? And you can watch it then. Brian Murphy says, dropping Kyogo. Yeah, bold. It's a bold move. Now, bear in mind, Kyogo, he scored one goal in his last 8 games, I think. So his record's not great in terms of the goal scoring. We've been speaking about how he seems to be more effective if he's allowed to drop a wee bit deeper, and O's introduction allows him to do that. I did expect somehow to play 2 up top today. I was a wee bit disappointed that we didn't do that, but you can't get everything because I wanted O and Mikey Johnson and Iwata all to play. So you can't get it all, can you? But I'm sure Kyogo will come on at some point tonight. William O'Toole, hoping for a quick start and a few goals for the Hoops. Hail, hail. Absolutely. And William is at Paradise, and he is just beginning to layer up. Unlike O, who was bouncing about at McDermott Park with his bare feet, just to show us how hard he is. Michael McDonald, it's Palmer's night tonight. Well, let's hope so. I asked the question earlier on, just before we go to the game, Kev, about Brendan Rodgers talking about having he wanted 4 quality players in the summer. Do you think Palmer reaches that kind of benchmark? Was he one of the quality guys out of the 9 that we've signed?
I think he's been the most quality out of the 9 that we've signed. I don't think there's much debate on that. And I would say because he came in fairly late in the window compared to some of the others, that he probably was Rodgers signing. I think he's probably one that you could, say it's got Rodgers' stamp all over it in that sense. Guys like Kwon and Yang, even Home, I don't think they were necessarily Rodgers' men. They were maybe rubber stamped by him in the end because the deals were so far down the line. But Palmer probably was, I think, a Rodgers signing. He's definitely played him at every opportunity that he's had, and he's getting a song out of him, as they say. I think when he plays, so yeah, I think he is the one of the 4, and we'll see if he can get the other 3 in January.
Well, it would be good if he was a player who could get back on form because, I think he's shown quite a bit since he came in. He went on a good goal scoring streak as well. And then he's kind of gone off the boil a wee bit. So tonight, obviously, will be a challenge for him. Let's join the action. Celtic versus Hibernian. We are looking for a quick start. Hopefully, by half time, we're talking about a goal or 2 in favour of Celtic. Before we do it, though, big shout out to you and Boy Martin supporting the channel. And as he says, hit the big thumbs up if you think Celtic will win tonight. He thinks it will be 5-1 to the boys. Let's hope you're right, Ewan. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you to Kevin McCluskey for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks,